Recently, I declared that I want to make an extra couple of million in my business. Now, that's no small feat because my business currently makes 6 figures. It means going to 7 figures. So I want a couple of million because, one, I want to buy a flat. I actually own a flat somewhere else, but I want to use that as my kind of pension income later. So I want to buy one around here, and around here where I am, a nice flat for 2 bedrooms costs about £1 million. This is in London, in Hackney. The other thing I need £1 million for is for my pension pot, because my pension's not very good. So I need to make that money in the next few years. But that's cash in hand. That's cash to me. What I was curious about today was, how much do I need to make when you include all the taxes? And I've joked when I announced this thing that I'm going to need £1 million for Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor of the Exchequer, for the time being. But the problem is, I think it's going to be a lot more than £1 million. So I asked ChatGPT how much it is and to do all the calculations. I'm going to show you what it came up with, because I think it's really interesting to do this kind of thinking backwards from, I want this much money, how much money does the company need to sell, including VAT and everything else. And the other thing is, the number is really shocking. So I'll show you it as I work it out. Okay, so here is ChatGPT 5, and I've put it in thinking mode. The prompt I've given it is this. My limited company is VAT registered. If I want to make 2 million in personal cash, how much do I need to sell in VAT inclusive sales, as in the top line sales that comes into the company? Assuming the company costs are fixed and no more than 10% of ex-VAT sales. It is possible to make a 90% profit margin in a business like mine, where you're running courses and doing mentoring, doing one-to-one stuff. Basically, the cost is quite low because it's me scaled up with courses and stuff like that. However, it's still quite optimistic, a 90% profit margin, even for my kind of business, because I do have people who help me put things together and run the whole show. But the other thing is, if you want to scale quickly from 6 figures to 7, that's almost certainly going to require a shit ton of money spent on Facebook ads. So you're going to see that number come down quite dramatically. The other thing is, I haven't factored in cost of living, like paying myself while I'm trying to amass this 2 million in cash at the end. So in reality, what would happen is, I'm not going to get 2 million at the end of it. I'm going to get 2 million minus personal annual expenses amassed by the number of years I'm doing this over. I'm not shooting for making this in 1 year, because the actual top line figures are really big, and there's no way I can go straight from where I am now, as far as I can see, to that kind of turnover. So let's see what it's going to come up with. How long is it actually going to think about this? Costing open a few quid. Here we go. Thought for 6 minutes, 14 seconds. That was the longest 6 minutes, 14 seconds of my life, I can tell you. A watched LLM never boils. It's still not going to give him the answer. Okay. All right, so we've got a response after 6 minutes of thinking. Short answer, 5.81 million VAT inclusive. Ay caramba. Here's the numbers rounded up. I think this will be interesting. VAT inclusive sales, 5.8 million. Ex-VAT sales, 4.84 million. Costs, £500,000. Profit before CT, corporation tax, 4.3 million. Corporation tax equals £1 million. So here's the actual figures that matter. Corporation tax is £1 million, just over. And then personal dividend tax is 1.27 million. And VAT, which it hasn't quite broken out here, is basically about £1 million, I think. Yeah, so £1 million of that. So £1 million for VAT, 1/3 million personal dividend tax, and 1 million corporation tax. So I've got to earn 6 million to walk away with 2 million in the bank to spend on the flat, put in my pension pot, whatever it is I want to do with it. And that's, as I've said, not factoring in money to live on during that period. And that's assuming things don't get any worse. So, I'm not a, zero tax, all taxation is theft, libertarian type person. I believe in having a social safety net, and I believe in building roads and having a defense department and having some kind of health service, which is, somewhat funded by the government or at least supported by the government and so on. I'm not like Mr. Anti-Tax, but that's a big chunk of change. To get 2 million, I've got to make 6 million. I'm giving twice as much as I've made. Now, you might think that's a high quality problem, because if you got 2 million, you're already in a lot better position than anybody else is, which is true. Absolutely. So if I can actually do this, and right now I'm finding it hard to believe I'm ever going to be able to do this, but it is at least theoretically possible. It's just a huge amount of money. And I think the point that matters to me is, like, when people are going like, we should be taxing well-off people more, you're already taking 2/3 of the money. How much do you want to take? Because there comes a point where you just think, oh, I'm just not going to bother. It's like, I'm not going to get what I want. And it also encourages people, I think, to leave the country, because I can run my business from anywhere. I don't particularly want to leave the UK, and I don't think I would do that. But you can see why the more you tax people, the more people are going, I'm going to go to America or Dubai or Singapore or, I don't know, or Portugal even, maybe, wherever's more tax advantageous. Because if I get to this kind of turnover, it's going to make me millions of pounds making that move. I'm interested in your input on this. As I say, I'm not Mr. Zero Tax. I'm not like, oh, I shouldn't take any. But it's just an interesting conversation to have, I think. So I'll be interested in your thoughts.